month. And today I'm so happy that we're going to be talking about one of my favorite loves, and that is the art of improvisation, improvisational theater. For those of you that don't know, for me, I've been taking improv training for about 5 or 6 years. And I got to tell you, it's helped my business tremendously. And you're going to hear from some folks today who also have improv training, far more training than I've ever had, and hear some of their experiences with how this training has helped them, not only as DJs, but as business owners as well. So we're going to just kind of go around real quick and do a quick introduction of everyone. Rob, we'll start with you.
Yes, my name is Rob Ferre. I'm out of Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm a DJ, I'm an entertainer, I'm a game show host, and I use all these fun skills in my entertainment. And it's an honor to be a part of this. I've been performing all my life, and I've been doing improv ever since college. So that's kind of my background. I don't know if we wanted to do the round robin or if you wanted me to expand upon more, but that's
we'll come back. We're going to come back, and everybody's going to be able to throw in a whole bunch of stuff. Jared, up to you, man. Back or to you, man.
To me, man.
Yes, man.
That's good. My name is Jared Wade. I am based in Indianapolis, Indiana. I have been a professional wedding DJ and master of ceremonies for 2019 will be my 18th year.
Wow.
I've been taking improv. I know I'm old. I'm very old. I have been taking improv classes since high school because I was homeschooled, and that was a great way for me to get out of my shell. And because of those classes, I got into theater, I got into public speaking, I got into several different facets of entertainment, and here I am today. I run Jared Wade Entertainment. It's basically a audio-visual lighting company that focuses on weddings and corporate events. And just like my friend Rob, I focus on my corporate clients on game shows and doing custom game shows for 50 people up to 5,000 people.
Well, and Jared, I got to tell you, I'm happy that you've recognized that you are the oldest one in this group. You know, it's good to see.
I feel it, Ron. I really do.
Tim, to you.
Hi, I'm Tim Marks, based in Kansas City, Missouri, and I own and run the KC Improv Company with a lot of help from my friends. Each year we do about 300 shows and about 200 classes and workshops. And I've been doing improv since 2001 and teaching and coaching and directing improv, both for performers and people who want to perform on stage, and also people who want to improve skills that improv principles can help improve, since 2004, I believe.
Awesome. And Tim was my very first instructor in improv, and actually I've taken a couple of improv classes from him and actually performed on stage with him once at some kind of competition several years ago. It was a lot of fun. Had great fun doing it. So let's kind of dive in a little bit as to what is improv. I think a lot of people have their own interpretation of what it is, but I'll start with improv. To me is like it's about letting go and discovering things. It's about just starting from scratch and trying and with a team of performers trying to build on something until to create, as I think Tim has used in the KC Improv catchline. It's like creating something from nothing, which is pretty much what improv performance is. Rob, how would you define it?
Improv performance is all about the first rule, which is saying yes and building upon what is being given to you. I think oftentimes we are given different things in our performances, in our events, and we have to build upon that. And what really improv has done for me is help change my mindset and help me become a better collaborator. We are constantly collaborating with our clients. People who are in business are collaborators.
Absolutely.
And we are working all on a team. And that's what improv does. It helps create that teamwork. Now, I remember there was one time I was doing an improv scene, and I said no to the suggestion. And the person on stage who was playing with me called me out on it. And I was like, whoa, you're saying no, that's not a good improv. And I was just like, oh, wow, you're calling me out on stage on my own improv rules. But it was just funny. But these are the things that we do as entertainers, as business people. We are working with clients, we're collaborating with them. and we're building upon their ideas, and hopefully they'll build upon ours. And the thing is, a lot of this stuff may happen in the moment.
Right.
So what we do in the moment, we improvise. Life is an improvisation. But what makes it even better when we follow the rules, we can build upon something and create something better instead of saying, stop, back it up, let's start over. No, we're going to keep going.
Yeah, and to your point, no is a conversation stopper. I mean, it just ends conversations. And it's funny because I'm actually going to tell a bad story about myself, because in one of my classes, actually with Tim, and I will always remember this because it was that important to me. There was some suggestion, I forget what it was, but I said in class, I wasn't on stage, but I said something about, can we please have another? And Tim was like, you just let everybody down around you by saying no, because basically I said I wasn't engaged in that moment, and it would have taken away from. I broke the cardinal rule, and that has always stayed with me, and I'll never forget it. But yes, you're right. Everything we do with our customers, with our clients, with our couples is a collaboration. Without their input, we can't do our jobs. It's that simple. We can't do a memorable performance if we don't have their input as to the things that will make their event memorable. Jared, how about you?
I have to say, before I get into my spiel, that there are 4 very talented individuals here. I've known Rob for quite a while. I've known Ron for quite a while. And just saying those names back to back is kind of a mouthful. Rob and then Ron. So I have to make sure I slow down and enunciate both of those. I don't know Tim super well yet, but I'm very positive that our relationship is going to grow from this point forward. So instead of trying to expand on what's already been said, I'm going to kind of go a slightly different avenue and a slightly different route. And that is, I completely agree with Rob and I completely agree with Ron. And that is the thing for me, is that agreement factor. Rob briefly talked about the collaboration process and about basically, I'm going to steal a joke that you did, Rob. You have to stop and you have to collaborate and you have to listen. And that's a DJ joke. And I'm sure that everybody everywhere is going to hear that. I'm giving full credit of that to Rob. He was the one that initiated that snowball roll. However, I do feel that it is very important that when you do listen and when you do accept what has been given to you, you don't necessarily just listen and then throw it away or drop it. You listen and then you work with it and you roll with whatever has been given to you. In the business world, whether it's entertainment or whether it's something else entirely, you have to be able to adapt, and you have to be able to, if you're going to go this path and then all of a sudden something happens and you got to go this way, you have to be able to adapt and think quickly.
Absolutely.
And that's one of those keystones for me in regards to improv, is being able to think quickly. It's not always about being funny. It's not always about having the best joke or the best one-liner or anything of that nature, but it's about being able to accept what has just been given to you and acknowledging it and saying, all right, we're going to go this way now. We thought we were going to go that way, but we're going to go this way now because of X, Y, and Z reasons.
Right.
And that's been the biggest growth for me, is just being able to accept what's been given to me and being able to make those turns without having to be resistive. Which is that a real word? Resistive? We're going to run with it.
It is now.
Good. It's the process of resisting. We'll go with that. That's, for me, that's been a big takeaway for improv and business and what I do as an entertainer.
That's awesome. So, Tim, what do you think? How would you define what we do as improvisers?
Yeah, I wasn't able to hear everything that they said because I was just waiting for my chance to talk. No, I agree with everything that they said. To me, improv is a philosophy. It's a set of principles that can be applied to different avenues, different parts of your life.
Right.
And the way that I kind of teach improv now, the famous rule of yes and, I kind of break that down into 3 different things, 3 different rules. The first one is to listen. As you guys talked about, listening is crucial. Because if you don't listen, you don't know what to even say yes to. So the second principle is to say yes. And I think of that as listening to someone and listening for the good parts, listening for the
Right.
stuff that you really like. And in business especially, you can't say yes to every idea that someone has. You might have 30 different marketing ideas. You can't say yes to all of them. You have to make strategic decisions. But listen to those suggestions and listen for what is best and what's most useful in those. And then the third part is the and, which is just add something to it. Kind of bring one thing, bring a building block, let someone else bring another building block, and then you're collaborating and building things together. And I won't repeat a whole lot of what those other guys said, but.
Well,
Yeah.
I think one of the things I learned is that it's also about making the other person look good. It's whoever you're on stage with. It's always about trying to make that other individual look good. Even in business, you were talking about, you can't say yes you can't say yes to every idea, but on the other hand, you can have the respect of at least listening to that idea, and then maybe being able to modify that idea in order to make it work within your business. Even if the idea as it's presented doesn't work, you can always modify it in some way, shape, or form. So I'm just going to throw this out and just jump in anywhere, guys, because no sense going around in a circle all the time. But what would you say has been the greatest benefit of the training that you've had to your business? I know we talked a little bit about listening. Can you give it some, let me rephrase that. Can you speak to some specific examples of how maybe improv training has worked well for you? I'll start. Okay, go ahead. No, go, Jared.
Well, I think I've told this story before in the past. It's not a happy story, unfortunately, but several years ago, I was doing a wedding. I was performing for a couple, and we were downtown Indianapolis.
Sure.
And outside the venue is the main part of downtown. There's this river that goes through Indianapolis, and it's right off of the river. It's called White River. And what happened was we got to the dancing portion of the night, and there was a shooting that happened.
Oh, wow.
Literally 50 feet outside of the building, directly next to the bride's aunt and her family. And the bride's aunt ran back inside, covered in blood, and she was not hurt. The victim was outside, but she ran in. And the reason I'm telling this story is there are moments that you get shocked and jarred and thrown out of what you feel comfortable doing. And in that moment, I was shocked, but I wasn't thrown, and I wasn't taken out of a position of I need to be able to lead these 175 guests to however we need to move forward from here. And just to be honest, that moment, that was the moment that I was like, I am really, really glad that I took improv classes. Nothing to do with comedy. It had nothing to do with anything other than basically, okay, this is what's happening. This is what we have to do now. And everybody looked at me because I was the master of ceremonies. Everyone looked at me and said, all right, what do we do? And I honestly don't feel that if I would not have had any type of experience or training or knowledge of improv and that mindset, I don't think I would have reacted or handled it the way that I did, which was accepting this is what's happened and this is what we have to do from this point forward, and then being able to guide them and lead them from that point forward.
And even if it wasn't the right thing, at least you did something. I mean, it's easy to do nothing, but at least you took that step and you said, we're going to go down this road, and everybody kind of follow me. That's a bittersweet story, but it reveals a great point. I've been DJing for 28 years and actually retiring this year, but I did a wedding in the spring. I want to say it was April or May, and of all the years that I've done weddings, this was the first time I've ever had a technical issue. And I'm getting ready to introduce the bride and the groom and the wedding party and do all the personalized wedding party introductions and all of that. I use Bose sound systems. So I welcomed all the guests and everybody cheered, and then no sound, nothing. And so I just set down the mic I attempted to. I said something to the effect of, hey, it's such an exciting night. The sound system is so excited that it just decided to quit. So I begged a moment, and I said, you know what? If you'll give me just a second, we're gonna do this the right way. And I'm going to the sound system, to the speakers, and I'm turning them on and off. And the whole time I'm doing this in my mind's going, so what is Plan B? Exactly what is Plan B? So but fortunately the sound came back. I won't go into what the issue was on me. I made a mistake when we hooked up that night. But in this process of thinking of Plan B, I did come up with a Plan B. So if we had not gotten sound back, I think a lot of that would have had to do with and I was calm. There was a time in my life I would have lost it. I would have just gone into a total meltdown, and it would have just been awful. But as it worked out, the guests remained entertained. They went with me, much like they did with you, Jared, but they went with me down that road, and all worked out, and life was good. So, Rob, you got a story you want to share, or Tim?
I don't have a story. If Rob has a similar story, I'd love to hear that. But I was going to comment on how you guys reacted.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. I think that what some people might see or say when they hear the story from Jared dealing with a woman walking covered with blood,
right,
or a technical problem, is that you guys were thinking fast. To me, and I'm sure that you were, and improv training does help you do that. But I think the first thing improv training does is it's related to that concept of saying yes, and it's a little bit more complex than it sounds. But when new information is presented to you, if your brain can immediately accept this is true, now I need to start planning on how to react. I think that's what Jared was doing. He saw that it happened. He was shocked, but he didn't have to process it for 30 seconds.
Right.
And he probably didn't, or even 10, and he probably didn't have that much time. But your brain is trained to say, oh, this is new information. Okay, it's true now. Now what? What's the next step? And so you start thinking about how to react much more quickly than someone maybe who doesn't have that improv training, whose brain needs time to process and doesn't have that time of denial, or this can't be true, or just going through the emotional side of things. And I think that's what both of you guys did. It's like, oh, this equipment is not working. Okay, I need to come up with Plan B now.
and I will do it. I got to tell you though, Jared, that would have, I don't care, improv training or not, I would have been, I don't know what I would have done. I commend you for your reaction and response to that. I don't know that improv training would have saved me from just totally because first off, I don't like blood, but I would have, I commend you. I
appreciate the kind words. I do, Ron. That's kind of my default when people ask me, what have you gained out of it? Yeah. I honestly, looking back on it, it's exactly what Tim said. It's that processing power. And if you're a nerd, it's almost like improv is you're buffing up your RAM. You're just getting more access to be able to process quicker, and you're able to hear what's happening, accept it, if you will. I mean, you have to, as much as I don't want to say, I accept that this just happened out there. You have to more or less acknowledge, okay, that did happen, and I don't have a lot of details as far as what happened, but we're going to move forward, and we're going to continue with however we possibly can. It's one of those stories that I don't like telling, and it's a horrible story altogether. But when you hear it in context, it's like, okay.
Now I understand.
This makes a lot of sense.
A little light comes on. Rob, you have something you'd like to share?
So I don't have a specific story, but Tim talked about listening, and I think what's one of the most important things we do as performers is listening to each other and reacting in the moment. Sometimes when I go on stage and I do a scene, I have a character in mind and I have a motivation in mind. And I'm like, this is what I'm going to do. And then sometimes I still go ahead and do everything that I wanted to do, but it did not feel authentic to the scene or to how I was reacting. And so sometimes we go into a situation thinking, this was my mindset, this is how this is going to happen, this is how it's going to play out. And it doesn't play out the way it should, because we're not listening, because we're trying to do it our way. So I think that's very important. Another thing is a lot of DJs, and I'm going to start calling out DJs here, and there's probably DJs who do this and say, I don't take requests. I'm proud of that. Are you really? Just because like you're the bomb, you know everything? And so here's the thing about that. I understand if you're a club DJ, you are up on your throne, on your pedestal, and this is your set. This is your creative license to do whatever you want. I get that. But if you are working for somebody else and you are not taking requests and you are not feeling the room and you're not reading the room, you're doing them a disservice. And one of the greatest things that you can do is when you find that song that you had no idea, that diamond in the rough, and then everybody comes out and sings it, you're like, oh, I had no idea. It's All Coming Back to Me by Celine Dion was your jam in college. Like, and everybody is singing along to Celine Dion, and you had no idea this was about to happen, but it created this amazing moment that you'll never see again. And if you said no to that moment, to that request, that moment wouldn't have happened, and you probably wouldn't have gotten that amazing review. And so that is just an example. That happened to one of my DJs this week, and he's like, I played the Celine Dion song, and it was a banger. Like, nobody would have thought that that song would have been that way. Let me give you one more example. What I do a lot of is I like to MC, and I like to do things differently, and I like to think out of the box. And, you know, oftentimes at these galas or at these corporate events, we give away free stuff. You know, they have a raffle, they have a drawing, and they draw out things. And I said, you know what, why don't we switch it up this year? We have these sponsors prizes. I want to give away these prizes to people that deserve it. And so they went with that idea. And what I do is I look for people who are worthy of these items. And so I had a gift basket full of spa material and all these type of things. And I said, okay, who here in the audience deserves a spa day? And everybody like raises their hand. Well, who here has the most kids? You know, and then we started going on that. And the contestant that we found, or the person that won the gift basket, had kids there with them. And she goes, yes, we have 7 kids, and 2 of them are here with us right now. I'm like, what? I'm like, God bless you, take it. And everybody's applauding because they knew that person deserved that gift and deserved that prize. But this was kind of improv. And this is where I'm going into the audience and being with them and saying like, all right, here's the number. Oh, right, congratulations to you, sir. Moving on. We're creating moments with our clients, and that's what improv has done for me. People will give me something. One more story. I was presenting at Mobile Beat 2 years ago, and there was $1 on the stage. I don't know where the $1 came from. It was from my previous person who spoke before me, but I didn't see their presentation. And I pick up the $1 and I say, I got $1. And then this lady from the audience, I had no idea who she was. She's like, that's my $1. I'm like, who are you? And we're talking back and forth from the audience, and I don't know what she's saying. And so at that moment, improv mind kicks in, and I said, ladies and gentlemen, just so you know, this is what we call a disruptor. And everybody just laughed and applauded, like, we deal with these disruptors all the time. How are you going to deal with this disruptor? You know, I'm going to give you this $1 later on, but, you know, and then it moved into a part of my speech. And that's what I love about that improv brain that I have, that I'm able to create these moments that weren't expected. And it makes a lot more fun, and people can relate to that. That's the end of my story.
Well, and all three of those are great stories. And I think, I don't know, Jared and Rob, I don't know about the two of you, but in my life, everything I've done from stage for the most part has been, and especially before improv training, had been scripted. I didn't do anything without a script. I mean, every word is a part of a script. And one of the things that improv did was to allow me to let go of the fear of letting go of that script. It's kind of like not holding on to your mother's hand anymore, I guess. You know, you just kind of like, okay, I'm on my own now, and I'm going to run around and try to do things without this crutch to hold me back. Are you pretty much the same way, or have you always been kind of by the seat of your pants? Or planned, I guess. By the seat of your pants.
Are you talking to me? Or
either doesn't matter. Just jump in.
Okay. Yeah, that's a problem for me. I like to be unrehearsed. That's the way I am. I do rehearse a little bit. I think rehearsing a story is very important. Knowing your, and I'm now thinking about my speaker brain. I'm a speaker, I'm a DJ, I'm a host, whatever. I'm now thinking as a speaker. And I think I am more comfortable on stage just kind of talking and being able to be less scripted. But there are times having a script, having structure is very important. I've done a lot of plays, and when I was in high school, having that structure was very important to me. But when things go awry, when things happen differently, you don't get flustered. You're still in that moment. You're still in that character, and you move forward. So let's relate it to DJs. You're DJing, music turns off, or your software freezes up.
Oh, yeah.
What do? How do you compete in that moment? One of the things that I do is I say, you know what? I meant to do that because you guys are rocking so hard. I had to reset everything. We're going to do this all over again because we got to start from the beginning, and I want to hear you sing it even louder this time. And so this is something I learned from Todd Mitchum. Your mistakes are intentional.
Own it. But what is it he says? He says something. It's not own it. It's use it.
Yeah, use it. So this is intentional. No, like, oh, I screwed up. Like, you can own it, but you can also, instead of like, oh man, I'm the worst. Like, no, guys, this is what we're doing. This was meant to happen. You know, we are going to move forward, and this is going to be awesome. So I think that's one of the things that improv does help us do in those moments.
So Tim, in your experience working with corporations, what are some of the things how have you seen improv training help companies? Before you answer the question, because I want people to know, one of the things I do a presentation called Business Unscripted Improv for Wedding Professionals, and one of the things I talk about is that major colleges now are offering improv training to their business students to help better prepare them for when they graduate from college to be able to handle that within the corporate structure. Well, first off, have you experienced any of that? And then also the second part of my question is what things have you seen happen that have helped? How have you seen improv help? See, it's really hard for me to talk today. How has it helped other businesses improve?
One of the things I'm proud of is the number of repeat clients that we have, which is evidence to me that what we're doing is helping them. They know that it's helping them. A couple examples come to mind. One is a large advertising agency here based in Kansas City. We worked with them on kind of an 8-week program for one of their business departments. And they took some of the improv principles and ideas and used them as kind of icebreakers and igniters for their meetings, for creativity, for collaboration, to get people less afraid to speak up and share their ideas. You can imagine just an advertising agency, but many other places where you have a lot of younger people who are afraid to speak up. They don't know what the rules are. They're afraid if they have one bad idea that their reputation is ruined. And if you have the leadership who buys into improv training to tell people it's okay to try things, to throw out those ideas, throw out a lot of ideas, we'll find some that are great. Another example that sticks out in my mind is we worked with a library system and did some team building with them, and they loved it. And a week later, they were interviewing to add a new person onto their staff, and it was down to 2 people. And they brought us out to do improv games with those 2 candidates and some of their staff members because they felt like they got a really good grasp of who those people really were, and whether how they related to people, how well they listened. So that's a real unusual one, but that's one that always sticks out in my mind because they believe that much in those principles that they use them to help make hiring decisions. Right.
Jared, did you have? I felt like I jumped from Rob over to Tim to want to make sure I'm not leaving you out. Yeah.
No, I've been flawless my whole life. I've never had any issues, so I'm good.
Good to know.
Yes, and
well,
I mean, outside of what Rob and what Tim mentioned, there's not a lot more that I can expand on outside of my own world, other than I'm very similar to Rob. I started in improv before I did theater and before I did radio, so I'm used to got to go quick, got to go fast, got to figure it out, got to accept, got to move. You know, you don't have 30 seconds to just sit around and figure out what's going on. You look, you see, you acknowledge, and you move on. There are a lot of pros to that, but I also feel that you have to have a balance between the quickness and also the, oh wow, hey camera, you want to refocus here?
Right, I thought that was my eyes.
No, that's me. My camera's just deciding to do its own thing, and computers are taking over the world. So this is just the first step. They're like, hey, let's get rid of the egotistical people first, and then we'll hit everyone else. It'll make the process a lot faster. I started in the improv world, and then I quickly realized, like Rob mentioned, there are areas that you need to rehearse. There are things that you need to script out. There are things that you need to be able to process beforehand.
Right.
For me, specifically, the big ones were names. Just showing up and then being able to read names off like that isn't a forte of mine. It's something that I need to look at, and I need to repeat and rehearse and go over and over and over and over
right.
again. The question that I get asked a lot when I'm sitting down for consultations is, what's your style? What type of style are you, either for a corporate client or for a wedding client? And I tell them that I'm a reactive, structured conversationalist. So again, that's a reactive, structured conversationalist. And they're like, what? And I go, I create really big, fancy words. No, I say, basically what I do is I have to be able to react to a structured thing that I'm having in a conversational format. That's the way that I process everything. So I have those influences and those seasonings, if you will, of the structured element. But at the same time, I'm able to react and adapt and conform as I need to in order to keep things moving along. So that's the long answer. The short answer, started in improv and then migrated the other way. And I spent a lot of time going away from improv. Now I'm coming back to improv to get some additional training and refreshing my brain up on that as well. So there's this weird balance.
And actually, you kind of, your what was it? Reactionary conversation. What?
Reactive structured conversationalist. It's very simple.
Yeah. I don't know what your deal is, Ron.
The RCC that you talked about.
It's like 13 syllables.
Yeah.
See?
Yeah,
RCC,
you know
can... Anyway.
Yeah, you know me.
Yeah. You know me. It reminded me, I mean, I think something else, another just area I think that maybe has helped me in is my ability to be a better storyteller. Especially when I'm meeting with a couple and I'm trying to paint a picture of what their evening is going to look like, because my mind moves a little bit more freely. The story flows better than it would without that particular training behind me. I think because it's when you're engaged in improv, you're basically you're really telling a story. At least that's. Am I right, Tim? And that the purpose of a scene is to eventually tell a story. It's to engage.
Right. It might be a short snippet of a story,
right?
Or it might be a longer story. But doing improv, and not just quick gimmicky games, but longer style improv, long form, teaches you a lot about story structure and how to pace things out, how to leave breadcrumbs so that later you can reference them back, and all those kind of little details about storytelling. Because in improv, you get a chance to do a lot of storytelling in a really quick, imperfect way, and you learn as you go.
Right. Well, and it's a way of engaging the audience, because there's a quote about, and I can't remember who the quote was, but it was something about fixing a bicycle. Did that ring a bell with you?
Yeah. How
does that quote go?
That's a quote from Mark Sutton. Yeah, it's a quote from Mark Sutton, who's a great instructor out of Chicago, who I've had the pleasure of working with many times. And he says, no one leaves an improv show saying, man, I'm glad they fixed that bike. And that's a way of saying that people don't care that much about stuff.
Right.
You can make a funny joke about a bicycle maybe, but it's not going to really make an impact on people or be something that they care about, compared to a story about relationships, a story about how people affect one another. That's why we watch theater. That's why we watch movies and television shows, is to watch how people influence each other and react to one another, because we can all relate to that.
Right. Well, and I think, and that relates to sales, is that people don't care about the stuff you have. In the DJ world, do customers really care about the lights, the sound, the technology, and all that stuff, or do they really care about the relationship? How this is going to benefit them? What is the end result going to be? That's what they really care about. It's not, yes, they need, or they want the lights and the sound and all of that, but what they need is a flawless event, or what they really want is a flawless event, something that their guests are going to be praising them for years and years to come.
Right. Yeah. I'll do this and then I'll stop hogging the stage.
You're fine. Jump in.
Don't tell me that you have the spinning thing with 16 different lights and some of the blues are different. Tell me how it's going to affect the people at my wedding reception. Tell me what effect this will have on people, or why it's a benefit. I don't want to know all the technical details. Yeah,
exactly.
So I agree.
Exactly. So so one last thing, then we're going to wrap this up. I want to talk a little bit about fear. One of the things that I think we've all kind of addressed it in a way is that improv is about letting go of your fears. I remember first classes, you're always afraid you're going to make a fool of yourself. Supportive teachers, they're not going to let you make a fool of yourself anyway. Even if you do make a fool of yourself, you're never going to know that you were made a fool of yourself. You're going to be the most spectacular individual. So getting out there and getting on that stage and getting involved in these classes makes you have to let go of fear. And I think that especially like I talked about my breakdown, sound breakdown. Jared, you talked about that incident. You're you let go of fear, and you do what you need to do, and I think that's got to be one of the greatest takeaways for me from even performing on stage the few times that I have, just being able to let go of that. Would you all agree? I love the nodding heads. I'm glad there's video, otherwise this wouldn't work because.
Yeah. Fear is a big thing for people, and people getting out of their comfort zone. You're very comfortable with what you know. The fear of not knowing what's in front of you. And I think there's a lot of personalities out there who are very structured and like the comfortability of structure and knowing what's going to happen. So maybe improv is not for you. But the most important thing is being open to it. So if anybody who's been watching has made it this far, you're probably thinking to yourself, oh, this is fine and dandy. I'm not these guys. I don't have that type of personality. How does this apply to me? So a couple of different things. Open up the possibilities by saying yes. Also, you can start practicing on your own, but you are now training a muscle in your brain to think differently instead of saying no and backing down. And so I've talked to different DJs like, well, how do I use improv? Like something's going to happen. You're in the middle of your welcome speech at a wedding and something happens. Or you're trying to introduce somebody and something happens. Right. Or at the toast, something is very awkward that happens. Do you acknowledge the elephant in the room? Do we move on? Do you have some fun with it? But only be subtle with that. And so some of the things that I suggest people do is start practicing in their car and start practicing different scenarios, practicing at home, whatever it may be. Interview yourself in your own talk show. Start doing different improv games on your own. Look for an improv group in your community. There are different ways to do this, and if you need any help, we're here to help. Absolutely.
Well, I think it's a matter of letting go of the status quo. I say that the status quo is always looks pretty good when it's put up against effort, but the rewards of effort are far greater than a status quo. Tim, any advice for people that may be seeking to take their very first improv class?
Do it. my advice would be do that. Most medium and large-sized cities have a place where you can go and to like a drop-in class or a one-off class, or some places have even a free first class that you can take to try it out. And so if you have any inclination, go for it. It's not a room, in my experience, it's not a room full of performers and seasoned actors who are going to make you feel uncomfortable. It's a mix of people who did, some theater stuff in high school or college, and then, people from all walks of life in an improv class, the engineer and the lawyer and the bartender and the stay-at-home parent and whomever, and a wide range of ages and interests. And so I would say, don't be afraid. Go for it.
Yeah. And in Kansas City, it's fortunate because we have Casey Improv Company. There's also, I'm sure some of the colleges, even some of the high schools now offer improv classes as well. So
most markets offer comedy sports. They are franchise. There are those all over the country. So comedy sports, they usually have institutes or improv workshops. But I do believe colleges are getting more and more keen to it. So there's a lot of colleges that do that. I know if you're not a college aide, that might sound weird, but maybe just drop in and say, hey, I would love to learn this, because college and learning is forever. So if you definitely want to be better, people are always saying to me like, hey, I want to be an MC, I want to be a game show host, I want to do what you do. I'm like, well, you got to have improv skills. You got to be charming. You got to be witty. You got to think on your feet, and because you watch what Steve Harvey does on what is he doing? What's the show?
Family Feud.
Family Feud.
I'm sorry.
Oh my gosh, that's the greatest thing ever right there. You couldn't think of Family
Steve Harvey, Family Feud. But the reason I relate that one is there's a lot of improv that's going on there. I mean, he comes from a stand-up background, right? But what is he doing? He is getting the material from the contestants, giving them a look, laughing, but building upon their answer. Okay. And so it's like, well, I want to be like that. Improv is where you need to start.
Steve Harvey was almost, to kind of go along with what Rob was saying, he's like a reactive, structured conversationalist almost. Just throwing that out there. But also something that Tim had mentioned about looking for classes, I would encourage if you've already done a class, if you've ventured out and you're like, oh, I tried it and it wasn't what I thought it was going to be, or I didn't care for it or whatnot. You have to keep in mind that there are different groups, there are different clubs, there are different troops, and there's different personalities. There are different teaching styles. Sometimes you have to visit a few. Sometimes you have to look around and find that right group and that right individual who's teaching it, or the style that they're teaching it, or whatever it might be. We all learn differently. And just because that first one doesn't necessarily check off all the boxes on your list, that doesn't mean that you crumple up the piece of paper and you throw it away. You get a new sheet, you go to another one, and you say, okay, let's see what I can get out of this one. And I'd almost promise you, if you went to 3 or 4 different ones, one of those would fit, and you'd be able to check off quite a few of those check boxes to find that right fit for you.
Yeah,
I think for me, I mean, when I got involved, I mean, it became almost an obsession, maybe a little bit strong of a word, but it was all of a sudden after that first 8-week class, I had to have a second 8-week class. Then I had to have a third 8-week class. Then I started doing the little satellite workshops, and you just become, it's like, God, I love this so much. It becomes so much fun. It becomes a part of your, I told my wife said, why do you love improv so much? And I said, because I hate bowling. That would be my option. Let's go out on Monday night and bowl. I have an option. Go to Monday night bowling, or I could go do improv with people that I really enjoy spending time with. And I think also something else, and maybe I should let Jared say this because he's the oldest in this conversation. But the one thing I found,
if we could hurry it up. It's like 3:15, and I got to get to bed here.
Got to go watch Family Feud. Got to go watch. What was it Steve Harvey does? But it doesn't matter your age. I mean, it was the most accepting group of individuals, and it was so much fun to hang out with such young minds, and you know, it keeps you young. So I think Jared would agree with that as being the oldest in the room. So we're going to wrap this up real quick. Just final thoughts. Anybody have any final, you know, something that maybe we've talked about, you got like a final thought you want to throw in there that you think DJs or performers, entertainers, business owners might find of value? Anybody?
Yeah, you inspired me to think of this tidbit, Ron, that I think I might, keep using when I talk about it with businesses. But, you said you used to be a planner, and, you had to prepare.
Yeah.
And I think people like that usually are like that because they're perfectionists, because it really matters to them that everything be as good as possible. But what if to be the best presenter, performer, wedding DJ, club DJ, what if to be perfect at that, you needed to be able to be adaptable to what's happening in front of you, to be able to improvise, notice what is happening, listen, right, change your plan a little bit, and your preparation will pay off, certainly. But if you add the ability to adapt and improvise to that, then you're going to be a lot closer to perfect than you are now.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Rob, you have a final thought?
Final thoughts. Yeah. You need to evolve. DJs that are not evolving are sticking with the status quo. I think one of the best ways to evolve is to improvise. If you're improvising on your music, you should improvise in so many different things in life. Open the doors, open the possibilities of what can happen. And you never know what is behind those doors.
Jared, final thought?
The only thing that I can think of, especially for DJs, because Tim and Rob just do a fantastic job hitting on some very key points, and so do you, Ron. I didn't maliciously say you last. It was just...
Yeah, well, it was an afterthought.
Well.
I can take it. Bring it.
No, I have to say, for the DJs, for the entertainers, for the sound technicians, for those individuals that use their voice and use their personalities for a big chunk of what they do, but then they also rely on other elements of their arsenal, of their tools as well. I think that your ability to adapt on a tool structure and a tool sense is just as powerful. There's this video that was going around on Facebook not too long ago in regards to a best man was wrapping up a speech. He put the microphone down on the sweetheart table, and the
it started to roll off?
Yeah, it started to roll, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you see, I'm assuming it was the master of ceremonies or the DJ, like, run into the camera frame, slide on his knees, grab it as it was midway falling, and then step up, and then just keep on going like nothing ever happened. And I was like, I mean, how many people would be able to really look at that if they didn't go through some sort of a training process of adapting and seeing that happen? So it's not just about what you say, but it's about what you do. And if you can apply this knowledge, if you can apply that improv presence to your entire persona and not just one specific element or aspect of what you do, you're going to see I feel a much greater return on investment. If you take that time to improve on your thinking process, like Rob talked about earlier, that little muscle in your brain of being able to process and think quickly, and working on that and continuously working on it, and then you apply that to the other facets of your career as well, technical, transportative, or whatever it might be. It sounds kind of silly, and it sounds almost a little ludicrous to think about, improv, but in transportation. No, something happens to your vehicle. You need to be able to accept it and then react and figure out what you're going to do, versus sit there on the side of the road for an hour and go, I don't know what's going to go on next. You have to be able to adjust that and figure out how to move forward.
Right.
So that would be my final closing comment, is it doesn't just affect the comedy. It doesn't just affect what you say. It affects everything that you do for your clients or for your employees or for your company. And also, I'm not the oldest. I'm probably the youngest out of everybody. So. Tim, how old are you?
I'm pretty old.
You're pretty old? Okay. That's fair. I'm 17, so I'm fairly positive I'm the youngest person.
Back in my day, we didn't have sound systems.
Back in my day, we called it improvisational, and now all these kids, they call it improv.
Always having to abbreviate things. So my closing thought is, as Tim, Rob, and Jared have all three said, and by the way, gentlemen, I very much appreciate you joining me for this conversation. I hope people find it helpful. The DJs, performers, business owners find it helpful. But if you cannot find, if you're just struggling to find a class in your area, if you'll reach out to me, my email address through Disc Jockey News is ronruth@discjockeynews.com. Reach out to me and tell me what city you're in, and then I will reach out to Tim, because Tim is connected to improv companies all across the country. I will connect with him, and then he will tell me, he will provide me with the answers that you're looking for, and then I will pass that back to you. So again, ron@discjockeynews.com. If you can't find anyone, pardon me, goodness. Gentlemen, thank you so much for giving of your time today to have this conversation, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. And for those of you watching, thank you so much for joining in on another installment of Ron Ruth Presents, and I will see you next time.